tomorrow, Charlie Hebdo magazine will release their first issue since the terror attacks, and editors are not giving in to fear. The Muslim prophet Muhammad will once again be on the cover, this time holding a sign held by so many French people and people around the world, really, in the past few days. Je suis Charlie. The text above reads, "All is forgiven." The magazine planning to print up to 3 million copies this round. Their usual print run is only about 65,000. Katie Pavlich is the news editor for townhall.com and a Fox News contributor, and she has written an extensive piece about the real breaches to freedom of the press that have been going on for years and years. But what's your reaction, first of all, to this publication, Katie?
I think it's a strong stance for what the editors who were killed last week really believed in. You know, they believed in free speech. They weren't going to cower in fear despite being under attack since 2011 for simply drawing and publishing cartoons that a lot of radical Islamists thought were offensive. And I think that the fact that they're going to publish 3 million copies shows that not only are they getting support in France, but really globally people are standing up to this and finally saying enough is enough.
Yeah, you go through so many other examples, including Jim Foley and Steven Sotloff and many others that we need to start to think of perhaps as part of a larger piece of the threat that exists to this freedom around the world.
Well, you know, Martha, it's, as horrific as the attacks were last week in Paris, they unfortunately weren't an isolated incident. When you go back to 2014 and look at everything that happened that year, there is a jihad against free speech, whether it's ISIS beheading American journalists and sending that message, or whether it's Hamas intimidating and threatening journalists who are in Gaza trying to report objectively there about what is going on and exposing that for what it is. I mean, obviously they think that speech is powerful because they use it themselves. They produce propaganda videos, but they don't want people who are against what they're doing to speak out because they know it's very powerful. And it goes down to the issue of changing that culture and changing how, people look at the world and understanding that there is life outside of hate and fear and killing people just because they have a different point of view. I mean, the list goes on and on. We could talk about CARE, CARE and their efforts to shut down Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who of course is a human rights activist who has spoken out against Sharia law and how how the impact on women is under Sharia law. I mean, it's here at home, it's overseas, and I think it's time that we come to grips with this being a long-term problem that needs to be addressed immediately.
Yeah, and who is championing that charge? I mean, where is the voice sort of pulling these things together and saying, regardless of what your speech is, we have to protect your freedom to say it?
Well, I think, Charlie Hebdo, in their efforts to publish 3 million copies of their latest edition is a start. But I think that, unfortunately, the United States not being at the Rally for Unity on Sunday really sends a very poor message when it comes to the value of free speech, the value of freedom of expression. I think that the Obama administration, by not sending someone more high profile, actually cheapened the value of free speech. And that's really unfortunate, because if America, which has the First Amendment in its Constitution, isn't going to stand up at that level for freedom of expression, we're in big trouble. And that's not to say that other countries, of course, have much more work to do than we do on this issue. But I think that overall, it's the journalists who are going to have to stand up and say, I'm not afraid. Radical Islam is completely contrary to what we do in terms of freedom of expression and reporting, and we have to make it stop by standing up to it and saying it is wrong to kill just because you're offended.
Yeah. Well, as the Charlie Hebdo editor said, Stéphane Charbonnier, I would rather die standing up than live on my knees. And that really is the universal question that's being asked of so many of us around the globe in the wake of all of this. Katie, thank you very much. Great piece. I encourage everybody to take a look at it.